As many of you already know, after spring 2025, Fnatic finished in 4th place. A very disappointing result for many reasons. One, Fnatic hasn't won a title in almost 7 years, despite appearing in 8 finals, despite having many promising looking rosters on paper, and this year most insultingly, with G2 underperforming, you'd expect this stacked roster that was second all throughout 2024 to win something in 2025. Almost immediately after spring, head coach Grabbz announced that Fnatic would explore options to swap out either top, jungle, and or mid, citing out-of-game effort/attitude problems as the primary reasons. Not so much in-game mechanical or even macro errors, although there were plenty of those too. And so, after a spicy 2 months with wild rumors flying all over the place, we finally have our answer as to what changes would finally come through for Fnatic before summer. One change: 3.5-year Fnatic mid laner Humanoid would be benched in favor of T1 Academy's mid laner Poby. But there's more to this story than just the result. How did we get to this specific roster change? And why only one change? What other options were on the table? And why, you may be asking, does discussing the how we got here matter? Well, that's easy, because after combing through all the information we have about this Fnatic offseason, I can tell you with confidence that this change doesn't fucking matter. Fnatic has not changed. They are still plagued by the same issues they have been facing for years now. Fnatic is still doomed. First things first, Fnatic never explored options within the LEC to replace Oscar, Razork, or Humanoid. The only tops, jungles, and mids Fnatic were looking at were either ERL players, Korean imports, or currently inactive players. According to the information that's been made available to the public, it seems Oscarinin had the most potential replacements being considered, with 5 notable ERL top laners mentioned, HLE challengers Rooster, who eventually declined to instead sign with BDS, and finally, and most interestingly, the inactive, all-time great European veteran top laner Wunder, who ironically got replaced by Oscarinin just 2 years ago in 2023. After winter 2023, Wunder was asked to try out for the starting top position against other players like Oscar before heading into spring. Despite being considered the best performing player on Fnatic at the time, almost unanimously by the fan base, Wunder was a bit insulted to have to prove himself for the position despite performing so well on stage, and B, didn't believe in the roster of Razork, Humanoid, Reckless, and Advienne anyway. So why fight to play on a roster that you already feel would be no better than the horrific one you just finished playing with?
It was a disaster winter, okay? They wanted to hold tryouts, but this rumored tryout roster was not a team that I had much hope in. So I said that doesn't make much sense to try out for a team that you don't really want to play for, you know? They wanted to try out Oscar, and I didn't actually want to try out, so they just went with Oscar, and that's it.
And that, in hindsight, was just another early indicator of Razork and Humanoid being so obviously incompatible that even their teammate of over a year didn't want to play another split with them. Back to the present, Fnatic was discussing 3 potential options for Wunder to rejoin. 1, full-on replacing Oscar as the starting top laner, which again would have been ironic. 2, coming in as a dedicated positional coach for Oscar in the top lane. But finally, Fnatic would ultimately offer Wunder option 3, joining Fnatic in a 6-man roster rotation. There aren't many specifics on what this would have actually looked like if it was agreed upon, but instead of speculating on that, I would just point to T1's attempt at a 6-man roster just earlier this year, with veteran Gumayusi being replaced by T1 Challengers ADC smash as an example of this not working at all. I think a 6-man roster would have been a disaster. Both Oscar and Wunder would have been under intense scrutiny every single time either of them played on stage. It would have created two camps of fans, each arguing after every game for their preferred top being better and more deserving of what would likely be the final spot on the team by the end of the year. Honestly, I think it's a pretty stupid suggestion by Fnatic. Wunder was clearly insulted in 2023 with having to justify his ownership of the top lane starting position, and somehow we think this time around he'll be more understanding and motivated? Stupid. And I don't even think Wunder should replace Oscar. Yamato Cannon said in a recent video that Oscar is strong at both carry and weak side tops. Meanwhile, Wunder didn't even look great in his last split with Team Heretics in 2024. And my biggest complaint from that time was that Wunder wouldn't step up and play strong side when he was on rosters that lacked an alternative strong side win condition. So in my opinion, at best, you'd get a rusty weak side specialist who might get back to his peak, but I ain't holding my breath personally. And back in the G2 days, it was said that Wunder was a lot like Humanoid in the way that he didn't just grind solo queue. When he got home, he more so played other games in his off time outside of scrims. And although this is speculative through Thorin, he thinks Wunder is the type of player who, when he does go try hard and practice solo queue, for whatever reason, his performance seems to dip.
The rumor with you obviously is this whole thing of that you never play League of Legends and that you only play when you have to, but you turn up, you win anyway. But the problem is, once obviously the G2 team that didn't win came along, people actually think that meme's real, do that you just never play the game.
In the team, I was playing the least amount of solo queue. I definitely don't think solo queue is useless. There are certain times where you need something else. I had to prepare against a guy who was gonna play Darius and Olaf. For me, a better practice would be doing one-on-ones or just watching the VODs of even him playing the matchup to see what he does. For me, scrims are the most important. If you are too tilted from playing like 8 solo queue games in the morning and you lost all of them, you managed to waste all your teammates' time, that's like the worst thing you could do. Preventing that is better than overdoing too much work outside of those hours. Unwinding with World of Warcraft or whatever game was a way for me to de-stress a little bit.
This being most evident in G2 2021, when apparently as G2 started to struggle in summer of that year, Wunder, alongside the rest of the team, tried to take a more serious, regimented approach to practice, and Wunder ended up looking easily the weakest he ever had in the G2 Super Team era of 2019 to 2021. I think the best option would have been Wunder as a positional coach. I don't know if Alphari was ever officially brought in by G2, but after their victory in winter 2021, Broken Blade shouted out Alphari for his help in improving BB's lane phase. So whether officially under the G2 banner or not, Alphari was positionally coaching BB, and it paid dividends, with BB even besting Eastern top laners that year. That would have been an exciting way to implement Wunder to me. Every other option sounded absolutely awful. Last thing, this Sheep Esports article where I'm getting most of this intel from said that Oscar does not have the versatility that Mirwin has, for example, but Mirwin has been criticized for only being competitive when playing said versatile champs, so saying that Oscar lacks versatility when compared to Mirwin is so stupid. In that case, Kana and BB lack versatility because literally no one else plays some of the crazy shit that Mirwin does. And it's been often said that Mirwin's champion pool is something that MDK and MKOI had to work around, and in many cases has been a liability for the team rather than an asset. And listen, I really like Knock Knocko, but trading Oscar for Knock Knocko I think would really expose the difference in their level. Are we all forgetting that Oscar can pop off? Is Knock Knocko hard carrying Vitality? They didn't even make playoffs in spring. And Knock Knocko only pops off on certain picks. On some others, he looks utterly useless. What short-term memories and recency biases do these people have? That change would no doubt pan out like a much worse version of the Skewmon replacement of Yike. Go to my previous videos. I talked time and time again that Yike was underrated and that Skewmon replacing him felt stupid after developing Yike for 2 years, and ta-da! Yike won his first split off of G2, and G2 still hasn't won a split yet. Listen, Knock-Knocko, I really like you, but the fans need to seriously start putting respect on Oscar's name. Unfortunately, Sheep Esports has not released much intel on who may have been considered when regarding replacing Razork. The early rumors seemed to all revolve around other teams inquiring for Razork, which made it seem like he might be the most likely to go, with GX and Na'Vi, the new team that bought Rogue's old spot, seemed to be the most likely options. There was also rumors of G2 Razork, but come on, this is just brain dead. Back when Fnatic and G2 were both bidding on Elyoya, one of the reasons Fnatic didn't finish the deal was because they couldn't offload Razork. Fnatic even tried to offload Razork to G2, but G2 either wanted Elyoya themselves, and if they could not get him, they preferred to just go with Yike. Why, after making such an ambitious move in signing Skewmon, would they then take Razork? And for the record, I don't think Razork and Caps would have a good synergy. I am not sure why Sheep Esports revealed so much about Oscar's potential replacements, but has said next to nothing about Razork's. Early on, they said there were multiple options for replacements for all 3 roles. Maybe this indicates that Fnatic quickly decided to keep Razork, which after you see the video I am making about Razork, it will be obvious I think this is a massive mistake. Maybe there is some other reason why they are keeping the options they explored under wraps. For some reason I can't think of. Maybe because they want to explore those options again at the end of the year? One can only hope. Little bit of foreshadowing. I think Fnatic should have kept Humanoid and gotten rid of Razork. So keeping Razork, massive thumbs down from me, dude.
I never said I was perfect.
So Humanoid finally got replaced, much to Humanoid haters' pleasure, I'm sure. Kadril followed T1 challengers closely when Reckless was on the team in 2024, and he breaks down Poby's pros and cons in this great video here. TLDR, Poby isn't some gifted second coming of
Chovy,
micro or macro god. In fact, he seems more like a player who, more than anything else, always looks for crazy out-of-the-box solutions and plays to win games. And there is some valid value there for sure. However, doesn't that sound a lot like the chaotic Fnatic of 2024 and a lot less like the Fnatic of 2025 with Duffman and Miky X, who are likely trying to play a more controlled and less chaotic style where good, disciplined League of Legends leads to wins and not cheese Hail Mary plays? Gloves off, I think this is such a stupid move. Humanoid sounds so much more in line with how Upset and Miky want to play, and Poby sounds right up Razork's alley. Honestly, the cynical side of me says this is entirely an optics move. Do they really think Poby is going to bring an insane work ethic? This doesn't make any sense. Fnatic had Noah and June last year, and Gaz said in an interview at the end of 2024 that Korean imports are not the solution to any EU team's problems. They are at best a temporary band-aid. They come with communication issues and language barriers. And although it is said that Poby's English is good, they said the same thing about Noah too. I thought the problem with Fnatic wasn't about mechanics, but about not fucking sending it when we have winning game states. It felt like when Grabbz made his original announcement about demanding changes in Fnatic, that things would be different this time around. Perhaps because of the fresh, experienced leadership Grabbz was theoretically bringing in. But the more I look into all of the potential and eventual changes Fnatic made, the more I feel it's more of the same flawed team management that has been plaguing Fnatic for years now. Which brings me to In case you don't know, this guy is Dardo, Fnatic's team director since January of 2020. He has received so much flack from the Fnatic fan base over the 5-year period of 2020 to 2024 because as team director, he was the most responsible staff member when it comes to roster changes. I cannot get into every single example in depth right now, so I'm gonna speed run here. Fnatic keeping self-made going into 2021 despite the core members remaining wanting to get rid of him, Fnatic losing Bwipo going into 2022 despite offering him life-changing money in Bwipo's own words, losing Upset going into 2023, losing Wonder after Winter 2023, signing and overpaying Humanoid in 2022. All of these horrific decisions and more seem to be because of Dardo. In addition, Dardo's position in Fnatic seems to be the most closely comparable to Romain's role on G2, despite the naming conventions being different. In the 2024 MSI Legends in Action, it ends with Dardo angrily telling the players how upset it makes him to see Fnatic meeting for breakfast, many of the players being late.
We are playing at 12 in the fucking morning and not be ready.
Many of the players being varying levels of tired.
It's unacceptable. We are zombies.
And overall, it obviously negatively impacts the mood of the team every day, which was already one of the main themes of this backroom discussion. But thank God, one commenter brilliantly pointed out that it's Dardo's job to make sure the team goes to sleep on time and gets up early. He's chewing out his players for not being organized and disciplined when it's literally his responsibility, not theirs. You need look no further than how involved Romain is in every single game that G2 plays. Romain is at every single game from the start of regular season to the last game in playoffs. Dardo only comes out for playoffs and finals at best. Meanwhile, when it's playoffs and finals, Romain is going the extra mile getting dressed up to boost the morale of his team. Romain is a part of G2. Dardo is just managing Fnatic.
I went to the breakfast at 9:30 and G2 played yesterday best of 5 series until the fucking 10 in the night and they were at 9:30 all together having breakfast.
It is two completely different worlds. I bring up Dardo because after 2024, Dardo announced that he was stepping away from Fnatic, much to the Fnatic fan base's relief. Finally, a no-brainer decision by Fnatic. But then it gets announced that what was marketed misleadingly as a departure was actually just a break/vacation before a transition to a new position still within Fnatic, which was not transparent. And now it comes out that Dardo was involved to some degree with this offseason. Now, Sheep Esports does claim it's simply due to his experience and connections, so it was mostly relegated to just negotiations and not actual decisions. But bullshit, dude. Going into 2023, with Dardo as the big decision maker, he decided to replace Hylissang with Fnatic's academy player, Rux, based on Rux's 2 Worlds performances. Now, I will fully admit, I was so sick of Hilly's inting and Rux looked so good that I thought this move should happen too. Now, I admit how stupid that is to say in hindsight, but I admit it all the same. I will even go as far as to say that it is common knowledge at this point that Hilly had issues with both Razork and Humanoid, as both players didn't like how Hilly wanted to play the game. And that dysfunction is pointed to as one of the biggest reasons why Fnatic was so dysfunctional in 2022 as a whole. However, one, that's an outsider's opinion. I don't know what the inner workings of Fnatic actually were. And so, despite initially agreeing with Dardo's decision based on the eye test at Worlds, when the decision was announced to upset Fnatic's killer AD carry, who had worked with Hilly for 2 years and was often considered to be the best bot lane in EU and competitive with Eastern bot lanes for almost the entire 2 years of working together, Upset declined to be the starting AD carry if Rux was to be his support. And Dardo benched him for it. Wouldn't you think that if your star AD carry, who just had one of the most impressive splits an AD carry has ever had in LEC history, who just popped off at Worlds 2022 with a pentakill and this sick kill on Lucian, wouldn't you want to keep him at all costs and perhaps trust his judgment? Apparently, other notable options like the hotly contested rookie Exakick also declined to work with Rux, instead insisting that he be signed along with his support from LDLC, DOS, and Karzi, who was also in talks with Fnatic, also declined to work with Rux, and despite 3 different hotly contested AD carries all saying that Rux was not good enough to play with, Dardo insisted he knew better, and instead signed the only AD carry desperate enough to work with anyone, no offense, Reckless. Oh, and Dardo also lost Reckless under his leadership at the end of 2020 to G2 no less, which is another and arguably the very worst loss in Dardo's history. And getting him back led to disaster. It shows to me that Dardo is not knowledgeable about the game, and he isn't making informed decisions based on what his players and coaching staff are telling him. To me, the Poby signing reeks of trying to drum up excitement instead of signing a player that actually fills the gaping hole in this team. Final thing, back before Worlds 2022, Upset also mentioned that Fnatic, for some stupid fucking reason, despite Oscar coming off of a hand injury and Fnatic miraculously qualifying for Worlds despite that, for some reason, Fnatic wasn't scrimming until 1 week.
Correction, Fnatic did not scrim until 1 day before the tournament, much worse than 1 week.
Before the first game on stage.
I think other teams are scrimming with each other. I don't know. I would love to scrim.
You guys are literally gonna land, maybe get 1 day of scrims and then start playing play-ins.
Yeah, so Fnatic's the only EU team that's not scrimming right now, I believe. They should be scrimming, but they can't. It's a cringe reason. The team wants to scrim. It's not anything to do with the team. You can hear it in here. Upset wants to scrim. It's not the players, the coaches.
What the fuck? Based on my comparisons to G2's Romain from before, I believe scheduling scrims is Dardo's job, and here is Dardo not scheduling scrims for his team before the biggest event of the year. What the fuck? I am so tired of Dardo. He must have Sam Matthews nudes or something because you cannot get rid of this guy. I have one last person to go over. In another project that I am working on that goes into more depth about this Fnatic offseason, I spoke positively about both my perception and fans' perception of Grabbz, based on his reaction to Fnatic's losses in 2025 so far. And yet, this offseason has given me a lot of reasons to now doubt him. Now, after going in so hard on Dardo, I will say, if Dardo is the culprit overstepping and taking away Grabbz' influence, then perhaps the following criticism is unfair. However, 1. Fnatic signing Grabbz, then Miky, then Duffman felt a little bit like trying to run back G2 2019, which Team Heretics also just tried last year to really bad results. Grabbz and Duffman, after the G2 Super Team disbanded in 2021, went to Team BDS, and that was a colossal failure, with BDS ending in 9th and 10th in 2022 spring and summer respectively. After 2022, Grabbz and Duffman leave and are replaced by Striker, who is coming off of a successful run coaching Carmine Corp in the LFL, and Striker's inclusion helped lead BDS to becoming a title contender in 2023 and 24, all the way up from the aforementioned 9th, 10th placements. So after pointing that out, it feels like, are Grabbz and Duffman, and especially Grabbz, really incredible coaches? Or did Grabbz in particular get very lucky being on G2 during their super team era? Grabbz joined G2 in 2018, and that was the first year since G2 joined the LEC in 2016 that G2 ever lost a split. They lost both splits that year, and it wasn't until Caps joined in 2019, which made the team absolutely broken, that G2 would dominate again. And then, upon Perkz' departure in 2021, G2 would fail again. Grabbz' resume shows that he doesn't make an impact on these teams at all. At least Duffman joining C9 in summer 2023 and G2 in 2024 seemed to make a big difference in the team's playstyles and led to, even if marginal, higher results than the previous splits without him. Grabbz does not have this same direct impact on teams. 2. This offseason, Wunder was considered to rejoin the team, and to me, it just screams of being stuck in the past once again.
Why do you think the trio OG, you, Wunder, and Perks couldn't find the same success on Heretics as you had on G2?
League as a whole improved a lot since 2018. Like, the game changed so much. We didn't have the same strength as we used to. I also felt like we didn't have the same amount of hunger, the same amount of drive as we did in 2018. So you can say we are washed, basically.
Yeah.
Wunder looked bad in 2024, and Oscar has consistently been a top 2 to 3 top laner for almost his entire run in the LEC. Besides Kana and BB, I am not convinced that Mirwin or Knock or anyone else would be better. And this is coming from a diehard MKOI fan. Looking to a rusty Wunder feels borderline delusional. Finally, Grabbz has mentioned a few times that he wants Fnatic to have an academy roster, mainly so they can bench players more easily, since with a full 5-man academy roster, you can interchange any player at a moment's notice without having to worry about salaries or any other non-gameplay related politics. Now, this is a nice idea, but we have already seen that with esports being in what many have called esports winter, with very little money in circulation, and apparently the LEC as a franchise is losing money year after year just by the existence of running itself, most teams cannot afford to run both an LEC and an ERL team.
Editor's note: the majority of LEC teams do have academy teams, meaning what I previously said was actually incorrect. However, most can afford secondary teams since they spend less on their primary teams than the top organizations do. Fnatic and G2 spend by far the most on their LEC team compared to the rest, and usually this pays off with them being dominant. Fnatic dominant, LOL. So top orgs like Fnatic and G2 cannot afford to also run an ERL team like everyone else.
Especially not a team as financially irresponsible as Fnatic, who apparently, after spending a shit ton of money when the money was flowing, are now suffering the consequences since the well has run dry. What's annoying about this is, yeah, maybe an ERL Fnatic team would be great, but one, asking for such a big committal, expensive, long-lasting change is near impossible. That's like telling Fnatic, man, I bet if we could get Chovy, I bet we'd see improvement. Yeah, no shit, but that's not going to happen. Grabbz, no offense, but coaches come and go. I personally think Nightshare did a phenomenal job last year and is grossly underrated, and he was gone in just 1.5 years. Thanks, Dardo. Grabbz even said himself, if Fnatic thinks he should be removed after just 2 splits, he would understand.
I have a contract in November, so for me, investing in the future doesn't even make sense if I might not be there next year. So.
So if you are asking for Fnatic to commit to at least 500k in salaries, which it would arguably be more, since in the very same interview that Grabbz is talking about, he references that ERL players, for whatever reason, tend to get paid more than LEC players, but for argument's sake, let's just keep it simple with 100k per player for 5 players, not including additional coaching staff and other potential additional spaces and facilities. You want them to spend all of that because you think it would help. Meanwhile, you might not be here next year. And maybe the next guy doesn't think Fnatic needs an ERL team and will argue for disbanding it. 2, Fnatic just disbanded their ERL team only a year ago. You want them to go and add one in the middle of the year along with the roster changes you want to propose? This literally makes no sense. And if he's just suggesting it just as an idea, well, it's not helpful and it's not relevant to the current issues. 3, Team BDS had a successful ERL team when you were the head coach. and it didn't pay off until you were gone. Is the argument that if they kept you, you would have had as much, if not even more success than Striker? I don't think so. And finally, Fnatic had an ERL team and it didn't do shit. The only two players being swapped were Bean replacing Upset at Worlds 2021. Granted, it was at the last minute with literally less than 24 hours to prep, and he looked okay, but he was not LEC level. And Rux, well, he overperformed in 2 Worlds games, got the starting spot, and absolutely shit the bed, and was a part of Fnatic's worst split in their entire history. So what the fuck makes you think an ERL team in 2025 is going to fix anything? Like, what a stupid fucking suggestion. Grabbz references Real Sports as the main proof of concept that this academy roster system would help Fnatic.
The entire system of coaching is based on the idea that if you are not the best, and if you don't change to what is needed, you don't play. And that is the minimum thing that every coach has, besides in esports. I went to a Christmas dinner and Liverpool's goalkeeper coach was there. I asked him, what if you don't have this pressure point of saying you don't play? And he had a short circuit in his brain on the concept of not being able to change a player.
And it's valid to look at Real Sports for guidance to an extent, but not if it's done while also completely neglecting all of the reasons it wouldn't work in an esports context, especially under your current team's unique circumstances. And finally, Grabbz mentioned that a performance coach was ultimately signed, and that's great and all, but if Grabbz needed Duffman to help with macro and general game concept coaching, and if Grabbz needs a performance coach for team conflict resolution and individual mental health assistance and player development, and if Grabbz needs an entire ERL team to help hold his players accountable so that his players will try harder, then what the fuck do we need Grabbz for? Fnatic is so pathetic, dude. It just feels like problem after problem after problem, year after year after year. This is just one roster in one isolated year, and although some of the details are different, the themes are still the same as so many years prior. Dysfunction, mismanagement, and inevitable underperformance, and ultimate failure. This video was filmed all the way back on August 3rd, and obviously scripted sometime before then, all in reaction to the news that Poby would be replacing Humanoid. Since then, as I predicted, the change truly did not make a meaningful impact on Fnatic in any way. They ended one spot above where they finished last split, so 3rd in summer as opposed to 4th in spring, but when you consider that in winter Fnatic also finished in 3rd place with Humanoid, and that in 2024 with Humanoid, Fnatic was the undisputed 2nd best team in EU, then to me it shows that Humanoid was far from the problem. And now there's rumors that the situation got so bad at Worlds, low-key like never before during the Humanoid era, that Fnatic is considering replacing all 5 roles. Even Poby, who only played 1 split. So what was it all for? I think all of this just further supports my point that the Poby change was utterly misguided and ultimately meaningless. And the worst part is that sadly, like I've said many times throughout this video already, this is nothing new for Fnatic. Fnatic seems to consistently have promising starts, but then they underperform, and instead of giving their players a chance, they instead make desperate roster changes. And as they are attempting roster changes, they constantly lose opportunities to acquire and worse, keep exciting talent. They have near absent infrastructure, no consistency in their coaching staff or player development systems, and in my opinion, they clearly have incompetent management to top it all off. I have always felt like Fnatic was cursed. Like they have this cruel plot armor that always ensures they make it to the top, but never cross the finish line. With the news that Fnatic is looking to potentially replace everyone, which does not address the issues at the top that I think are poisoning every Fnatic iteration's chances at success, then I think Fnatic's results will literally never change for the better. To me, it's not a question of if Fnatic's changes before 2026 will lead to better results or improvement in general. I can tell you right now, they won't. So the question isn't, will 2026 be bad for Fnatic, but how bad will 2026 be for Fnatic? If you made it this far into the video, I truly want to thank you so much for watching. Along with this video, I've posted a video to a second channel that goes over where I've been, what's next for this channel, and what's next for that one. TLDR, I'm going to be covering more news and topics like off-season changes constantly and hopefully in a much quicker fashion. So again, if that sounds interesting to you, definitely go check that out. As always, I want to shout out my patrons, Bob Bulaman, RJVZZ, Trent, aka Lettuce Plate on all socials. He's actually been posting to his YouTube channel some Teamfight Manager 2 gameplay, so go check that out. Kevin Guyune, Joshua Bay, Tristan, Elias Uran, and my mom and my sister. Which again, I appreciate, but please cancel. Anyway, guys, sincerely, go check out that second channel. Bye. I'll see you next time.